But how are young people supposed to guard against that? Because I mean, now there's social media, there's so much news online, and the fact that you yourself said you were kind of partly manipulated when you were younger, how would a young person kind of guard against that? Or is it just something that is unavoidable?
No, it's unavoidable that people will make use of you, but it does boil down to why I named my second book, which is a collection of all my articles, speeches, and essays. I used the title was called Asking Why, because I have actually argued that asking why is at the source of all thought leadership. And thought leadership can range from Nelson Mandela saying, why should black people be inferior? It's led to why Mahatma Gandhi is saying, why should however hundreds of millions of Indians be ruled by a few thousand white people from the UK? They asked why. Martin Luther asked a religious why. You've got scientists from Galileo to Isaac Newton asking scientific whys. So unless you question not just the status quo, unless you question everything and decide to think for yourself, I think that's where all of us can be led astray, not just young people. All of us who see social media today with deep fakes and so on, a lot of people are not thinking for themselves. And I think, of course, young people more so, because not that they're not intelligent, it's because perhaps they haven't experienced deception so that enough. They haven't been embittered enough, like older people, that you become skeptical of things. So I don't think my idealism has shifted. I've always said that Claire and I are so proud of what we're doing in Banyan Tree, not because we want to be billionaires or we want to be having an empire with over hotels, but because Banyan Tree is today the vehicle by which we are doing all the things we wanted to do when we first got married, even as a development economist, and she was a sociological development sociologist. All the things we wanted to do. But today, I'm much more savvy. I'm much more skeptical of everything on the business side. I'm much more skeptical of banks. I'm much more skeptical of PE funds. I'm much more skeptical of politicians. So I hope that with age and wisdom, one becomes far more skeptical, but not cynical. And there's a big difference between the two.
And what is that difference?
The difference is, someone had said before that cynicism is the last refuge of the idealist, and means it's a refuge. You don't do things anymore. You become so cynical that you don't do anything anymore because everything is not worth doing. That's cynicism. Skepticism implies the fact that you question everything, you're skeptical about everything, but that does not impede you from action. You can be a very skeptical activist, but a cynic is one where the borderline has been passed. You become so skeptical about things, you become such a cynic that you basically believe, don't do anything, because whatever you do, it's not going to change anything. And I don't believe that. I believe that there's a lot of badness out there in the world, and you must always not be led into things, whether in business or anything else. But that doesn't prevent me from going out and every day trying to change what I think are the bad things in the world. I think that's an important difference here that I try to tell people, young people also. And there's a lot of overly old in mind cynics among young people. And I've criticized that, saying I call that sleepwalking through life. There's so many young people who are far too young to be cynical, but they sleepwalk through life, not meeting every day with joy and happiness and purpose, but just kind of like in China, 躺平, just kind of lie down and let life go on, because you're just cynical that nothing I do matters. And that's, I think, is really sad.
But how do you think that has come about? Because, I mean, you have a very big role in Singapore's education as well, have helping set up SMU and all. Like, what do you think has been pushing, younger people to have that kind of 躺平 kind of attitude towards life?
My experience of the Singapore system has got advantages and disadvantages. It's got the advantage that because I'm a complete outsider to it, except for a short stint in US, I'm not blinded by the fact that I'm part of the system who grew within it. I never studied here. I suffer from the disadvantage of not knowing perhaps the constraints of what one can do in Singapore. But I have always maintained that self-confidence is more important than anything else for a young person and even a much older person. And I think Singapore's highly competitive system, not just competition, but a system which already is improving very much now, but a system which during my time, even though I was not a product of the system, I was close enough to the system to actually understand it. At a very young age, you can lose complete self-confidence because of streaming. Right? Now, all the great elites who've done well become president scholars and then perm secs and then they become ministers. Great for them. But what about the guys who don't make it in that system? The high flyers are great, but the people who are not successful products of that system, you feel such a complete lack of confidence. Lack of confidence leads to a lack of self-agency. So you go with the flow. You don't think things can change. And I've spoken also, even recently at the Civil Service College, because I think it deals with civil servants, that there's been a book out called The Tyranny of the Majority, and The Tyranny of Meritocracy. And I've long argued that meritocracy, which is obviously like a motherhood and apple pie statement, right? I mean, of course we should be meritocratic, but the insidiousness of meritocracy, because there is no such thing as total meritocracy, and we've seen that too in Singapore. The bulk of university graduates in Singapore have parents who are university graduates. The large bulk of people who are lawyers and doctors have parents and so on. So the meritocracy that we have, the insidiousness goes two ways. The people who are successful products of the system think that because it's meritocratic, they really deserve it. And the people who don't succeed, this is the worst part, the insidious part, they really believe they should not succeed. Because meritocracy is fair. I didn't succeed, it means I am dumb, I'm worth nothing. Whereas if you are in an autocracy, or in a dictatorship, or an aristocracy, neither the privileged or the underprivileged believe in their hearts of hearts that this is what it should be, right? The aristocrat basically facing himself would know, I am where I am because of connections. The guy who's a serf in a feudal society knows, I am where I am because I was born this way and I don't have the advantages. So it's unjust. So sometimes growing up in an unjust world is good for you because you do not think you got there by yourself. Either you were oppressed and you didn't get there, which then gives you a sense of righting that oppression, or if you are privileged, you know you don't really deserve it. The insidiousness of meritocracy is the people who don't get it, who don't succeed, actually lose a lot of self-confidence because they think, unlike the serf who knows he's not inferior to the Lord in the manner, it's just that he was born this way and the system is unfair. People under so-called meritocracy believe they failed because they really deserve to fail.